Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. Woke up this morning looking at the news that Russia had invaded Ukraine, and like a lot of us, I think I'm very concerned about this, not just for what it means for the world, but also for just in general the loss of life that's bound to happen in this event. And but in terms of recovery, it made me remember times in the past where I had used an event like this as an excuse to engage in my addictive behavior. And when something bad happened in the world that I had really very little to do with, and that there was very little I could do about, I would still use it as an excuse to get drunk or get high. And so I thought it might make sense to take some time today to talk about, now that I'm in recovery, how do I deal with that when it comes up? And what I had to realize was that in my addiction, I used events outside of my control as an excuse to engage in addictive behavior. And this didn't just happen when something terrible happened on the world stage, but even just regular day-to-day events in my life. I would use events outside of my control as an excuse to engage in my addictive behavior, but then I would also use that same addictive behavior to feel more in control of these events. So it's kind of like I'm saying, if I can't control what's happening, at least I can experience it on my terms. And as a lot of us learn in programs of recovery that we engage in, that control, that sense of control is an illusion. And in reality, we have to learn to take life on life's terms. We have to learn to accept life as it is and control the one thing we do have control over, which is our reaction to life. So how do I deal with this kind of thing when it does come up? There's a few different ways that I was thinking about when I was reflecting on this morning. The first is just I have to maintain a hyper focus on what is the next right thing for me to do. And so if there's something very concerning going on in the world that has really got me anxious and fearful, I have to look and say, well, what's the next right thing to do? Is there something I can do directly to address the problems with this event? Is there something I can do to help in this situation? If there's really literally nothing I can do, then what I need to do is go about the responsibilities that I have in my own life, and whether that be just going to work and doing the best job I can do there, or being the best father and husband I can be. Those are the kinds of things that I have to really focus on and really look at. Sometimes if I get really anxious, what is the next right thing to do this second? Not worrying about the day ahead of me, just looking at this second. What's the next right thing to do? And doing that requires some discipline. And I've picked up that discipline from daily practice on this and daily work. One of the reasons that I get up every morning and do these videos is that it's discipline. It requires me to have discipline and to start the day in a specific way. And really practicing that has helped me to be able to focus on things like just doing the right thing and how that helps me get through the day. So some other things to think about when you start to have these thoughts. If you are, you're faced with some terrible world event, you think, man, I want to drink. Play the tape through. Think about, what does it look like if you take a drink? For me, if I went and got some beer and took or drank something that's in the house right now, for example, if my wife left for work and I started drinking some of the liquor in the house, What that would look like for me is that I would not stop, and I would end up probably close to midday drunk. And I have meetings that I have to go to and attend during the day. And so I would start this battle of trying to alternate liquor with with just water in an attempt to stay sober. And I'd mix some coffee in there and probably eat something greasy meal for lunch. And then maybe by the time my meetings come around, I'm not feeling too good. And so by the end of the day, I'm stressed. I'm not feeling great. I don't feel healthy, but I keep drinking anyway. And as the night continues, I get to a point where things are getting blurry. And even as they're happening, I'm not sure exactly what's going on. And the next day I wake up and I can't quite remember going to sleep. I don't really remember the end of the night. And I have to ask my wife, did I do anything I shouldn't have done last night? And I have to be worried. Did my son see me in an aspect that I don't want him to? And because of these worries and these fears, I start to think, man, another drink would be nice right now. And I can play that through. I know this is what will happen. It may not happen exactly like that, but that's the formula that I proved time and time again I would go through in my drinking. And I will literally play that out minute by minute. What does it look like if I take a drink? And I feel so intimately aware of what it looks like that I can immediately look at, okay, well, looking at that, do I want that? And if the answer is no, then I do something different. And the answer is always no, because I don't want that. That is, I will die more than likely if I go back to that. So I don't want that. But I had to learn to play the tape through and to really get to a point where I could see where I could see past the illusion that, well, maybe I can just have a drink or two and I'll be okay. The next thing that I have to try to do is not to catastrophize stuff. So not to look at one thing that happened and go, oh my God, the world is ending. And I also have to remember I am not a good predictor of the future. Things that have happened to me that I didn't see coming was, for instance, going to rehab. I never saw that one coming. Being an alcoholic, I never saw that coming. So I'm really bad at predicting the future. So I shouldn't try. And when I catastrophize, when I look at news and think, oh man, it's the end of the world. This is terrible things. I have to remind myself, human history is filled with terrible things. If you look back on the history of humans, it's just one terrible thing after another. There's beautiful and awesome things in there too. I think there's a balance, and some people might disagree with me, but I do think there's a balance. But that's what we have to realize, is that it's not like this is the first war that's ever been waged. It's not like this is the first injustice that's ever happened. And that doesn't make it any better or any less bad than it is. But it's just a reminder for us to keep things in perspective, because that was my problem, is I didn't have much perspective on things. I could go through a period of difficult times at work, and it very quickly, my brain would be convinced that that's the way it was going to be forever and ever. Amen. So I didn't have much perspective on, no, I just need to stick in there for a few more days and then we'll get back to normal. And it's the same thing with these kinds of things. We got to have perspective on these events when they happen so that they don't spiral us out of control. If you are having feelings that are so strong that you feel like you might lose some of this control that we've talked about over your reaction to the events, share your feelings, your fear, concern, and anxiety. Share that with other people. That helps me a lot. because other people can help me put things in perspective. And if that doesn't help, find someone else to help. You got to look for all the different ways you can stay out of your head. And for me, checking in on someone else's welfare and helping someone else is one of the best ways to do that. So I thought it might be useful to go over some of this today and just to talk about and acknowledge that sometimes these kinds of events can trigger people to want to go back and use, because that's what we used to do when big things happened in the world around us. Whether they were good, bad, whether we had something to do with them or not, we used them as an excuse. And we used our drinking and our using as a way of trying to get a little bit of control. At least if I can't control the event, I can control the way I perceive it. I can control the state I'm in when I experience it. But as we know now, that control is illusory, and it's not what we need anyway. What we need is perspective. What we need is a healthy response. And I hope that this has given you some idea into some different ways to have that healthy response when the world starts to fall apart around you, or at least when it seems that way. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more. Have a good one.